Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cloud Matsuri. It is a Friday evening, but, there's only one thing that you really want to do on a Friday evening, and that is talk about anime. But you don't just want to talk about anime with me. My name is Andy Hanley. I'm the marketing manager here for Anime Limited here in the UK. You want to talk to the man himself. You want to talk with Andrew Partridge, Anime Limited CEO. And the good news is he is right here. So I will introduce him now. Say hello and welcome to Andrew.
Hello and welcome to Andrew.
How are you doing on this wonderful
Bad
Friday?
jokes just couldn't go amiss here. Doing well. It is a Friday and it is a hip and happening night here for asking questions.
It certainly is. And we have plenty of questions. We put the word out earlier this week on Twitter and Facebook, and honestly, we have an absolute wealth of questions to get through today. We are also taking questions in our live YouTube chat, however. So if you do have a question that you want to ask, then feel free to drop it in there. And our minion moderators will pick it out and present it to me to present to you potentially. But like I say, we have a lot of questions, so you're going to have to make them good. So no pressure. But okay, well, Andrew, are you ready to get started?
I am ready to get started.
All right, then we will kick off with a nice softball question here from Aerofelon4 on Twitter, who asks a vague general question. How would you describe the anime market's current state?
I would say it's a time of consolidation, as people may have noticed. There's a lot of, obviously with Right Stuff joining kind of Sony, along with, Crunchyroll also joining Sony very relatively recently. And like Anime Limited joining PlayOn. There's a lot going on that kind of frontier. Globally for anime, though, as a whole as well, it's the same problem everyone's facing just now, which is the cost of materials are going through the roof, basically. So what used to cost like 50 pence now costs £2 to buy, for example, which makes making collector's editions really difficult just now. Like, I think you're seeing this across the board from companies. Some companies are treating it by doing less collector's editions. Some are doing it by raising prices, and some are just, eschewing away from it, focusing on digital instead, basically. So we're kind of in the middle camp there. Like, we basically insulated prices for as long as possible. There's like a slight raise required at times now to make it work.
Yeah, and it's definitely, obviously, we are all living through a cost of living crisis, and that is something that affects businesses as well as it affects everybody else, sadly.
Sadly so.
Indeed. So onwards to our next question from Owen on Twitter, who asks, what can be the most exciting and the most frustrating aspects of securing or releasing a new title?
Well, that's definitely a twofold question. I think the most exciting part of securing a new title is that kind of like thrill of hearing about it the first time and thinking about what you could do to promote it, basically, and like really build something exciting for the title. The challenge with it, the frustrating aspect of that side of things is, of course, that you're fighting against a lot of different people in the mix nowadays, and sometimes that decision can be taken out of your hands very quickly, especially if it's one of the massive streamers kind of putting their money in. Instead, suddenly a great idea for promotion, maybe still loved by the licensor, but you have to weigh up, again, the commercial viability of the title versus the promotion on it. And if the number is too distant, it's a tough one, but, we understand it, it is frustrating. On the other side of it, for releasing a new title, like the most exciting part is obviously designing it and shipping it to the customers. However, the most frustrating part of it, conversely, is getting it out the door to customers, as endless things can go wrong in the production process, and that can be just like actual production hiccups or just time to receive approvals or deliver materials out to people, and that can be pretty frustrating because it's not great to talk about that in any detail, especially if it's a really sensitive topic. But it's a frustration for the fans and for us, because we'd love to tell you more about it, but it can be kind of hard to do that sometimes.
Yeah, indeed. And I can say, like, having done this for 5 years now, like my own personal, I've never gotten bored of a new product landing on our desks and getting to actually see something that we made in the flesh. Like, that still continues to be a bit of a thrill whenever whenever one of those new products lands. So next up, question from Zach Shannon on Twitter, which feels more like an interview question that you might be asked on your CV. But now that you're entering the North American market, what do you think Anime Limited can bring to the table?
That's a reasonable question. I think there's a degree of things here. One is curation. Like a lot of in the US market just now, the majority of players are working on a volume basis as opposed to anything else. There's very few who work on a curational focused basis. So I think there's room in the market for that. I think there's also room for what we do in the curational space in terms of collector's editions. Stuff like A Place Further from the Universe feels like it deserves that kind of release, for example, which may have been hard for a larger company to justify who's got kind of 30 or 40 titles a season to focus on, or even 10 to 20, So I think there's a degree of curation and quality of that release once you've curated the titles, We're already bringing to the table music, which has been an amazing experience for us into a market where there's kind of a low output just now. It's really great titles from other people, but kind of a low output overall. And it's really fun to start connecting artists to audiences there as well, both through digital and vinyl, So I hope that answers the question. Please hire me for this job.
Yeah, I think you got the job, Andrew. Good news. And if people have missed out on what our initial North American slate announcements were at Anime NYC last weekend, you can find them on our blog.alltheanime.com, and also you'll find it posted on our social media as well. But as mentioned, A Place Further Than the Universe is the highlight there that a lot of people have gotten excited about, but lots of really great soundtrack and home video announcements. So make sure you check them out if you haven't thus far. So next up is Wicker on Twitter, who says, I really enjoyed the subtitled audio drama you released alongside Full Metal Panic Invisible Victory. Is this something you could potentially expand into, and maybe not just as something included in collector's editions?
It's nice that someone enjoyed it, actually. And it is something we, where we can look at it, we consider. I'm not sure about it as a separate business, because it's easier to explain as part of a home video edition while you're putting it on Blu-ray and or DVD and subtitling it. If you're releasing it as part of, say, a CD release or a vinyl release, some people will understand it depending on who the licensor is, but a lot of people, it might be harder to explain it basically on it, So it really depends on the licensor of the project, but I'm not opposed to the idea, and if people enjoyed it, they should shout it out as well, and we'll happily keep it in mind,
Absolutely. And I think it's also worth noting, in Full Metal Panic's case, that was a bit of a special case in that was an audio drama that we felt was intrinsic to the story. It's a missing volume, if you like, of the source material that is otherwise not animated, and we didn't want people to miss out on that chunk of the story. Whereas a lot of audio dramas are kind of, side stories or sort of, a little more frivolous. So it was a little bit of a special case. But like you say, interesting to know, what people think of them, and always open to feedback on these things. So next up is Alex Firth on Twitter, who asks, why are only the English dub versions of films released on iTunes and digital platforms?
Well, it varies from title to title. I mean, we've had a lot of requests for Belle dubbed on iTunes when we did the subtitled only version, for example. But basically the answer is that unlike home video, where you can put both on the same disc with no extra real cost, each time you put something up on iTunes, there's an added cost to it, basically the same cost for delivery. It's not cheaper with both versions because it's two different sets, one with subtitles, one for different language track. So that's really why a lot of them are dubbed just now. We are looking at what we're doing with things like iTunes, like Amazon Prime Video on Demand, that kind of stuff. Those kind of platforms for electronic sell-through, or EST, as it's called in the industry, and seeing what we can do to add to that as well, though. So if there's I would love to hear what people prefer there in terms of stuff you're buying on Amazon, kind of a transactional basis from any of these sites. Do you prefer dub, or would you really rather sub?
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because I feel like it's a trend we've been seeing more of in theatrical in terms of people gravitating towards subtitled screenings. Like I think the appetite has changed a little bit in terms of what people expect, and kind of the barrier of subtitles has sort of broken down thanks to Netflix and things like Squid Game, Parasite, etc., etc. It's not quite the off-putting thing it once was for a bunch of people. So yeah, would be interesting to hear. So next question from Bakra23 right here in the YouTube chat, who asks, are we coming back to MCM anytime soon?
Anytime, well, not until next year at this point. But I think honestly we're at a point where like the pandemic's reached kind of a point where it can get worse, obviously, at any time depending on variants, but I don't think it's going to improve, especially for the next while either. So I think at this point we've got enough of a visibility of what the strategy should be to manage things, to make a plan for it. So the ideal world answer is yes. I don't know if it'll be kind of in time for May or slightly later in the year, but like our goal would be to come back. We miss people, seeing people in person, having a chance to talk to people actually at the event. I think you'll see like a lot of companies beginning to do that this year as well, as we all try to find our way on it. It's a very difficult balancing act because we have two different sets of responsibilities and duties of care. One to you, the consumer. Like if one of us has COVID at the event, for example, and gives it to you and causes an issue for your family, we're going to feel terrible about that, like on it. But on the flip side, I also have a duty of care to the people who work for me as well, and a degree of making sure that they are comfortable in doing what they do on it. So it's kind of it is a double fold thing. That's why it's taken so long on it and why we've not really spoken too much about it until recently. But I hope people understand, and we are definitely we'll be coming back certainly in some form next year, whether it's with a booth or panels. We'll definitely be back in some form to events like MCM, not just MCM, but events like MegaCon and such as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as mentioned, we do miss you guys. Like, I mean, we were both involved with Scotland Loves Anime, and that really hit home to me, like meeting a bunch of people I hadn't seen in forever, of just like how much I miss that kind of convention, just getting to meet fans and people who are as passionate as we are about all of this stuff. So yeah, watch this space.
Yeah.
So next question. This is more of an ask Andy, because I know the answer to both of these. Jason Madsen on Twitter asked, will you be releasing the remastered version of Cyber City Oedo on Blu-ray? Also, could we get an anime release of Nadia the Secret of Blue Water on Blu-ray? Which my answers are yes and yes. I imagine quite a lot of you have caught our Christmas showcase video that we put out yesterday evening. But if you haven't, then check that out right here on our YouTube channel. But once this is done, obviously, don't miss the rest of this. Yeah, we announced that we will be bringing this remastered version of Cyber City Oedo as part of our 12 Days of Christmas sale, as well as an Ultimate Edition of Nadia the Secret of Blue Water, not just on Blu-ray, but also on 4K UHD Blu-ray. So keep an eye out for both of those on our sale. And that's my plug bit over. So now we can go back to actually Ask Andrew, in which we're asked by Grantford W on Twitter, who says, we were promised a high number of Gundam titles for 2022 that didn't happen due to external factors. Will these titles be prioritized for 2023? Which I can extrapolate out to just basically ask more Gundam, please, because that's what we're always being asked on social media.
That's a fair question on it. Ultimately, it really depends. The clue in the question there is external factors on it, unfortunately, on it, and it's one where we would love to, and like at this point, I'm confident there will be Gundam releases next year. In terms of volume, I couldn't comment yet, as it's just a case of like when a company like Bandai merges things like Sunrise and such back into themselves, basically, like that's a huge process. They also move studios. Like there's been a lot of work that's gone into things now. But incidentally, now the Witch from Mercury is being made 2 floors like below where the Suzumi no Tojimari is being made, which is a very interesting overlap for me in terms of creative talent. There's some creatives there who have key cards to basically access several different studios in that building now. And like so there's some creatives who can access desks at different studios in the same building. It's really fascinating as a thing. But back to the level of kind of overhaul that's been going on just now. So yes, we're beginning to talk about new Gundam titles again. And yes, we should have more more out next year. However, as with anything, we learn over time to not start talking about things until we have that all locked in and on the move. So as soon as we have more on it, we will give you information on, which I realize is not the most appealing of answers, but it's better to give you an honest answer than to blow it up and just upset you later, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, again, watch this space, but hopefully we'll have stuff we can talk about next year. So next up here in the YouTube chat, Kanatsuki03. We've had a lot of questions about various titles. This is the really good umbrella version of this question, which is why I picked it. Would you guys work with a company like Discotech to bring their titles to the UK?
I mean, we certainly have a great relationship with the folks at Discotech. Normally we actually share masters where possible, and such, because they do a great job of what they do, and it's a pleasure to do when we've licensed titles. So it really depends on what we license at the end of the day in the UK on it. There's a bunch of titles where we do overlap, and we may not have announced them all yet. I believe you did. There's a few which we have announced, but you never know on that. It's a really interesting list of titles they have there, you know.
Yeah, for sure, and it is something that crops up quite often. So yeah, duly noted. So next up from Grendy on Twitter, which is this is an interesting one because we are fast approaching our 10th anniversary and we've released quite a few things at this point. So he asks, is there any chance of future reprints of some of your older / sold out collectors and ultimate editions? I feel like I got into the anime Blu-ray game way too late and missed out.
Well, welcome to the game now on it, on Mad Frontier first off, and I hope you're enjoying whatever releases you're picking up just now. On Mad Frontier, it's kind of a tough one on it because I feel like there is a huge discussion of what makes collector's editions valuable on that frontier, and I think we may revisit old titles and do a re-edition of something, but doing exactly the same thing is a tough argument on it, because we've experienced this with vinyl as well, and people have a perception of an edition being in limited quantity. There's an added value to a subset of people to buy it that earns a lot of upset if you seemingly change that decision down the line. So I don't know if we do, as I say, I don't know if we do exactly the same thing, but would we do a new version of a collector's or an ultimate? Maybe it depends on the ultimates are a little bit harder on that frontier, but certainly we could do an ultimate into a collector's edition if we never did one, for example. That's something which is definitely possible, for example. Plausible is about to be what I said there for a second. Clearly thinking of cats. Yeah, hopefully that answers it on it. And don't worry, we have plenty of new awesome editions coming up as well on it. So I'm certain now that you're here, you won't miss out on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Alrighty. So next up from Scavenger on Twitter. I noticed that you're releasing Macross Plus in more territories than usual. Was this an opportunity made possible under the umbrella of Plyon?
So for people's reference, that's the company, the group we've kind of joined, Plyon Pictures. We're part of that family now on it. The answer to that is Novo. This was done long before anything related to that came into the forefront. Although we are looking forward to bringing Macross Plus to the wide range of territories. I mean, I know there's a few people who've asked when is it coming as well. So leaping on that question as well while we're here, it'll be all going well sometime next year. But you may have noticed we announced vinyls as well just now, and there's a lot of language editions to gather together to put the release out. So it obviously takes a little bit of time and patience to make it happen. But we would rather do it right for you guys than rush out an edition basically just to say we've done it now, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And you saw right through my cunning plan to segue us into when is Macross Plus coming out, because you say, lots of people have been asking.
Quite reasonably so too.
Absolutely, yes. Very. I mean, talking about the exciting things about licensing titles, when I heard that was coming, it was very hard to control myself, to be quite honest. So yeah, that's the kind of fun stuff that we get to do sometimes. So while we're on the Plyon topic, Tails XQB and right here in the YouTube chat asks, now that you're part of Plyon, are you planning to do multi-dub releases together with KSM Anime from Germany? Which again, I think is probably a broader question of, more multi-territory releases as a part of that change.
Well, I mean, I think it's natural when you're part of a larger organization to try and like share out the fun stuff if you're doing the same title across territories. It just depends on having the same titles across territories, which in the early days when you're marrying up kind of two different sets of groups catalogs, it takes a bit of time to figure that out. But in the long term, it really just depends on what we can do to make the best possible disc. If adding a lot of languages to it makes that a shaky process, but maybe a little bit of a split in authoring, like happens just now, you know. But in an ideal world, I don't see why we wouldn't. Like long term, it just depends on the right title and having the title in more territories, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up, Phantom Roy on Twitter asks, and again, this is one we've had a fair few people ask about. When can we expect to see Inuyasha season 2 and beyond? And are there any plans to release the movies?
I would say hopefully, and like touch wood, you will expect to see it like not super far into the future, but like we haven't got anything to announce yet on that frontier. Although the cars outside here definitely something to announce by the sounds of it. But yeah, like we've not forgotten about it, and the movies would come down the line in that scenario. But we definitely have heard people on that frontier, and we will come back to it, I promise.
Excellent. And sticking on the old classic train, Chris Brownowsky right here in the chat asks, any chance of releasing Sailor Moon in the UK? It's outrageous that such a classic is not available in the UK.
Well, the chances are never zero, and I would agree that it is such a classic on that frontier, but like it's one of those ones where we don't have any plans just now, but as soon as we do, we will let people know if we are so lucky as to be able to release it.
Excellent. And so I like to call this the bartender question, but you can't use bartender anymore because we actually released it. That man and his manga here in the chat asks, is there any release you'd love to release but just can't feasibly justify it?
Well, there's plenty of them because someone else licensed them, like on that frontier. I mean, you could pick your wealth of titles based on that, but what's a good question on it? I think it's really tough. The obvious one is like, because I couldn't license it, is Redline. Someone else is just now. I'd release Redline any day of the week if I could. Redline. Anyway,
if you had Redline on your bingo card for this live stream, you can now check that off.
Yeah, that's done now on it. But no, seriously, I think the answer is mostly short film. Like there's a lot of short film which is really tough to do, and I'd love to find a way to solve it. But like the fact is, it's no matter how good the short piece is, it's really hard to sell into people, no matter what you include with it, because people always see it as, well, this is a 20-minute or 50-minute piece. I think we're still trying to crack that mystery to this day.
Yeah, for sure. So cool. Next up, Stephen R on Twitter. Again, this is one we've had quite a few people ask about. Any word on Digimon Last Evolution Kizuna, and obviously its home video release specifically?
It's on its way. Sorry for the delay, guys, on it. Like it is still on its way though, and probably early next year, I would say, at this stage. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, quite looking forward to getting that one out the door as well. That was a fun movie and one of our many enjoyable theatrical projects of recent times. So yeah, looking forward to bringing that one to people. So next up, Help Video Game on Twitter asks, any plans for Hikaru-san Here Comes Miss Modern? I love the first film when it was at Scotland Loves Anime back in 2018, to which my response was, oh my god, was it that long ago? But he's right, it was. And he's always wanted to see the second one.
Sadly, there are no plans just now on it. It's kind of in a precarious licensing position. Like ever since like we started, we did look at it though. It's one of those ones where I wish I could give a vague kind of look to the future, which is normally code for hopefully one day. But like in this case, right now, it's pretty unlikely on that frontier. Sadly, we would love to though. We would love people to be able to see the second one as well, and the first one on home video. It's a really nice series of films.
Yes, it's one of those kind of little surprises that Scotland Loves Anime brings up every now and again, where everybody just really warms to a film and you maybe don't necessarily expect it. So yeah, absolutely.
You mean like Costco, Andy?
Well, yes. I mean, you know, that was always going to be a beloved film. Like, I don't know what you mean, Andrew. So next up is Space Potato on Twitter asks, can you provide any info on the potential release of the second Tokyo Ghoul live action film?
Yeah, like we'd definitely like to get that out in the near future, actually, on that frontier. So stay tuned, I would say. but yes, like it's of definite interest there.
Absolutely. So we're burning through these. We're really on a tear today. Mark Dodd on Facebook asks, will we get the chance to have more classic anime on the big screen like we did with End of Evangelion? I'd love to watch Street Fighter, Gunbuster, or others on the big screen. Which, again, I think broader question there of, sort of older classic titles and their sort of viability for theatrical releases.
I think it's definitely possible on it. I think there's a few I would love to do. I think the question is always, is this kind of a festival context or a like main theatrical, kind of a limited release kind of format, like for it. I think that kind of divides down the middle, but I'd love to do some more both with festivals and and on general release as well for some on a limited basis at least,
Yeah, and again, I think something like End of Evangelion is sort of a special case there, given that franchise, compared to perhaps some others. But so it always has to be kind of a bit of a case by case thing, really.
Yeah, I think so.
So next up is Makie Chu on YouTube, right here in the chat, asks, I know UX7 High Evolution 3 got its UK premiere in Sheffield last weekend. By the way, I'd be really interested to hear what anybody who saw that thought of it. But any plans for a wider cinema release or at least one in Scotland?
I think there will be one in Scotland, certainly at some point on it. I don't think there's a wider plan necessarily because the first two films didn't really fit the theatrical model we go for usually on it. But I feel like there is definitely room for a third screening because we definitely screened it as part of Scotland Loves Anime in the past films 1 and 2. So much like we did with the Kizumonogatari series before, it'd be a crying shame to not screen the final one,
Yeah. Absolutely. So something a little bit broader to ponder here. Personal Aries here in the chat asks, what anime limited release are you most proud of?
That's really difficult as an answer. Let me think real carefully about that answer on it. Let me think real carefully on it.
Please don't drop this on the live stream, Andrew, is what I'm Yeah, that's the Full Metal Alchemist Ultimate. Yeah, is absolutely a thing of beauty and
still sits on my desk.
Yeah, continues to be the craziest thing that I think Anime Limited has ever done,
Yes.
which is always something to aspire to.
I do I really love the all of the Ultimate editions. A few of the standard collector's editions we've done as well. I really Silent Voice is still a favorite of mine to this day. Bacano as well. I really enjoyed working on as well. It was just that one piece of artwork we really wanted to use on the cover. It was a huge fight to get away with, but we did in the end, and I'm just still overjoyed to this day on it,
Yeah, absolutely. And
I gave multiple answers, not just one. I'm sorry, don't make me pick one of them.
I mean, as mentioned, yeah, we have released a lot of SKUs at this point in time and a lot of titles, so I think it is really hard to pick one. I mean, for myself recently, things that I've worked on have included collector's editions of Tamako Market and Penguin Drum, and there are a couple of titles that I'm really happy that we've basically released the best edition you will find anywhere outside of Japan. And that's again the kind of stuff that gets us up in the morning, because it's really cool being able to do that kind of stuff and bring them to people and see people's responses to them. So back on the when is X coming out train, Paula here in the chat asks, is Kakegurui Season 2 still happening? Any info on a release date there?
No info yet on it, but we are still keen to release it. So as soon as we have more information, we'll let you know on it. It's one of those titles. It's one of those titles where it actually, would you believe, underperformed compared to expectation last year. When we released it, it was actually one of the biggest surprises for us of the 12 Days of Christmas in that sense, along with its following release sales, So it's just taking a little bit longer on it, but we're still keen on it. It's still a title I really like. I enjoy the manga massively, So yeah, it's not a never say never situation. Just it's taking a little bit longer,
Absolutely. So sticking with the YouTube chat, again, a few people have asked this, but Bakra23 got there first, so he gets the kudos. Are you planning to release Card Captor Sakura, the sealed card, on DVD and or Blu-ray anytime soon?
I'd like to do both of those films, the first and the second, at some point. So stay tuned. Nothing to announce just now on it, but we're hoping to have some more for you in due course.
Excellent. Cool. So moving over to Twitter for a brief moment. I'm sure people have seen GKID's announcement around this in the US because, again, we've had a few people asking, are there any plans to bring Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0 Thrice Upon a Time to UK cinemas?
Nothing to talk about yet on it, but given it appeared at Scotland Loves Anime this year, it would be surprising to not think there were intentions somewhere along the lines on that, but nothing I can officially talk about just now, you understand. But like, I mean, I think it's a film where like it really does deserve a big film experience. I think people who went out to the cinema at Scotland Loves Anime felt the same. It's like it's almost completely different, no matter what your home video setup is like at home, to see it on the big screen in that kind of environment with that kind of sound setup, you know. So yeah, hope that answers the question in a roundabout way.
Yes, yeah. I think hopefully people got to the bottom of that one. So next up from Pascal on Twitter, is there anything to say about a Violet Evergarden vinyl release?
I mean, one that I would just really, really like it to happen, but just because I would really like something to happen does not, in fact, make it happen just now. There was a small vinyl release for the movie bundled with a vinyl player in Japan. But there's been nothing since out of Japan on it. It's one I would love desperately to do though. So, like, I will keep looking. That is one I would love to release, but currently it's not super feasible on it. Going back to the previous question a few back, like on it, but it's one that's not. It's definitely never say never on it. You know.
Yeah, and we are big Violet Evergarden fans here, as people have probably noticed from our amazing collector's editions of the various parts of that franchise. But yeah, I would also be on the like fingers crossed line here if that were to ever happen. So to change things up a little bit, Chris Brownowsky with another question here in the chat. How did you get into anime? What was your first anime series or film?
Good questions. For me, it was the first series I watched was probably before I realized it was anime, which was Moomins. Or like also if you count ones after I knew it was Ranma 1/2. For series. For film, it was the generic choice with everyone in the same time of growing up was Ghost in the Shell. On it, and it was an experience and a half on that frontier. I watched a bunch around the same time, like on that batch, like Ghost of Michelle, Ninja Scroll, etc. as well.
So next up from Jim Keating here in the chat, with some popular Ultimate Edition extras, he's referring to Gundam Seed specifically. Do you think there's an audience for SD anime on Blu-ray as standalone releases?
I think for potentially, as I'm a big proponent of not wanting to change discs on my player, and you can only fit so much on a DVD, for example. So an SD Blu-ray is kind of, for me, logically the next kind of form for that kind of content. It's tough because it's like the video quality is never going to match Blu-ray, and I suspect that can cause a bit of friction at times with people. But I think it's still, if you can watch, instead of having like 6 discs for a series, you can compress that down to like 2, for example, or 3. That's kind of exciting as a prospect because then you can watch more without changing things over.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also worth noting, that there are visual quality improvements to that as well. Like, Blu-ray encoding is still better than DVD. The subtitles look a bit nicer. So, there are some benefits to it for sure. So it's an interesting proposition.
Perhaps they are.
So Paulie in the chat asks, and also I ask, to be honest, which is why I picked it. Is season 2 of Sanjifonium getting licensed possible now, since we are getting Liz and the Bluebird, and we previously released the first season?
My understanding before was it's complicated, but that's actually a good question. I need to look into the answer to now because I think enough times passed where it may not be complicated anymore.
Excellent.
So, no news just now, but it's definitely not an impossibility.
Yeah, and another one to cross fingers for there. This again, I think is sort of an interesting broader question as well, but it has a specific bent here. Gundamolog, that's harder to say than you think, on Twitter asks, why so many differences between French Gundam boxes and UK Gundam boxes? But there's probably a more general point here about the French versus the UK market, and any specific kind of challenges around that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it's more why are certain Gundams released in the UK and not in France. is my guess from this.
I mean, I think it's that sometimes there is a difference in terms of contents as well.
Yeah, sometimes just due to like available rights or available materials, basically as well. Like the French titles were not necessary. I mean, I worked at the company initially where Gundam was released in France, like at Bees, and like there was a lot of time which happened between me leaving Bees, for example, and Bees then shutting down. So there's no real necessary answers to some of the French materials that were created, for example, and then facing the cost of reproduction of those assets versus like the cost of, like basically the cost of the income you would make from the release. Sometimes it's a difficult proposition to make that happen on certain titles or to make certain parts of a title work, if that makes sense. So that's the majority reason on it, to be honest. I mean, ideally we'd release every Gundam title everywhere, all the Gundam.
Yeah, absolutely. So another palate cleanser here from that man and his manga here in the chat. Has anime ever inspired you to do something, i.e. laid back camp make you go camping, do it yourself to put up a shelf, etc., etc.?
I mean, Run with the Wind almost made me consider taking on running. It certainly gave me an interest in watching the Ekiden at New Year, basically. But outside of that, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think what, I already liked classical music around Odame Cantabile's release. Didn't go to art school, wasn't inspired to go to art school by Honey and Clover, but I did enjoy it. Certainly didn't get inspired to commit any kind of night out like the Night is Short Walk on Girl. Honest, and there's no evidence to prove otherwise.
Yeah, well, I was going to say which came first, Night is Short or the Night's Out. I mean, let's be honest here.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of anything else. I think that's probably the closest we got was the interest in the Ekiden afterwards and such for Run for Wind.
Yeah, that is fair. Yeah, I mean, I'm always a big sucker for kind of anime about pastimes that I wouldn't otherwise think about and find them fascinating. I have not yet driven a tank after watching Girls and Panzer, but if anybody is offering,
Glasgow was a place which will let you.
Oh well, there you go. Well, that's problem sorted then.
Andy's and Panzer's coming up next. You heard it here first.
Do you really want to put me in charge of a tank, Andrew? Are you sure this is a good idea?
Well, I mean, as long as it's not loaded.
Oh well, if it's not loaded, I'm not interested anymore. But yeah, I mean, I will say that the one thing I did have a hot minute where I played a lot of online Mahjong after watching Saki. That was probably the one time where I was just like, oh, I should try this game. Like, oh, this is actually really good. And then I realized. Then I realized I was terrible at it and then stopped. But that was fun for a few minutes.
I'm very pleased to report Kaiji didn't inspire me in any single way to do anything afterwards.
Yeah.
Very apprehensive about every situation in life.
So this was also my way of softballing in. This question from Michael on YouTube, who asked that now that you've licensed a place further than the universe, is there a chance we can get Yolo Camp, given it aired the same season was also a Crunchyroll licensed series?
I mean, nothing's impossible on that frontier, but again, that's kind of a situation where there's a bunch of things going on there in the mix where it takes a long time to integrate a company on the scale of Crunchyroll into a company on the scale of what was Funimation now is also Crunchyroll on it. So I mean, I personally love Laid Back Camp, but actually we ended up in the Yamanashi Prefecture at the same time as the cast. Going there for a special event, actually, for something. It's I didn't realize when I went there on holiday that it was actually I didn't realize the overlap at that time, and so I was like, wait a minute, I remember this. So yeah, but I do like it as well. So I mean, never that's in the never say never, not the sad face time, but it's definitely not in the immediate future.
Excellent. So while we're on the subject of a place further than the universe, AppleDude1221 on Twitter asks, when will a place further than the universe release on Blu-ray? Do we have any timeframes on that currently?
I would say probably depending on approval times. It won't be in the first quarter of this year anyway. Sometime probably late second, early third, perhaps, depending on. It takes a bit of time to get all your ducks in a row with the dubbing and also then there's a lot of stuff in the home video release I would like to include, but I have to to work out is it allowed first or not, as there were some ambiguous notes that came with the materials I received that I need to clarify first. But like all in all, like as soon as we can, basically on it. If it can be sooner, I will definitely make it sooner on it because I want it on my shelf as well.
Cool. Okie dokie. So next up in the YouTube chat, again, Kanatsuki03 asks, recently seen Toei wanting Kamen Rider to make a bigger presence in the West for its 50th anniversary. Could we see releases of full seasons like that? Which I guess is a more general kind of tokusatsu question that we see crop up from time to time in terms of the feasibility of releasing that kind of stuff on home video.
I don't think it's impossible. It's starting to go on in the US just now from several companies. So I mean, I don't view it as an impossibility. It's something on my list of things to look into the viability of at this point. So it's the answer is it's could you see it? Maybe actually, who knows? Like on it just now, there's no firm commitment from us here at this point, but it's something I'd like to look into. I'd be interested to know how many people are like tokusatsu fans in the audience or beyond as well to kind of make an opinion on that.
Yeah. Again, very much the kind of stuff that is useful feedback for us. You know, tell us the kind of stuff you want to see, and you know, we will at least listen and see what the appetite is like for these things. So next up, back to Twitter for a moment. Wolf on Twitter asks, are there any plans for a physical release of Little Witch Academia? And now that while Evergarden is out on Blu-ray in its entirety, I'm hoping we can see more Netflix exclusives.
I too would like to see more Netflix exclusives. Right now, I've got nothing to add on plans for it, except that we are releasing the vinyl of Little Witch Academia next year. I would very much love to do the home video release as well, but like it's kind of a let's see what happens sort of situation on it. So fingers crossed, as they say. But I would love to see it too from anyone, not even just us. You know, it's just there's a bunch of those Netflix titles now where it's like I just would like a home video copy, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise here. So I'm not sure if this is a football thing and it's Celtic or it should be Celtic. So apologies either way for whichever one is wrong. On Twitter, ask any news about March Comes in Like a Lion Season 2 Blu-ray release?
No news just now, but it is one we want to come back to as soon as we humanly can. I realize that is the current OG version of several of the other questions we've had just now on when are you releasing something. Or any news about. So yes, stay tuned.
Cool. So here's another question that sounds like it should be a job interview from Chris Brownowsky. You've been around for 10 years. Any reflections on your achievements or failures?
That is a deep and meaningful question on it. I think achievements are like making it to the 10-year point. Like for starters, I think we've genuinely helped open up a market for people that otherwise wouldn't have grown as much. The collector's market in the UK before us was pretty barren, and I think it's inspired a lot of places in the English-speaking world. Yeah, heck, our editions have been imported, have been used by other companies in other countries in the world at this point, which suggests we're doing something at least generally in a good direction. You know, I'm proud of the fact we've moved into doing soundtracks and really loving putting those together, promoting the artists, just connecting audience. Overall, I think it's summarized by achievements would be connecting the audiences to the creators in more meaningful ways than has been done before in the UK. I think we played a very significant part along with people like Jerome Mazandrani at Manga Entertainment back when it was Manga Entertainment in widening the theatrical market as well for anime. They did the hard part of the franchise side. We did the equally hard and tough part of expanding it for original film at the time. And those are definite real achievements. I think failures, I don't know, there's a lot of things to go about, but it's all really boring business level stuff where it's not really outwardly facing. I think the thing about running an anime any company as a whole is you always are learning as you go on it. And you always wish you could tell yourself 10 years ago what you know now and kind of look back and say, well, why didn't I know this 10 years ago? And the answer is if you knew it 10 years ago, the company would be going in a completely different trajectory at that point, you know? I think that's more often what it comes down to. I mean, I think the trouble is if you dwell on what's gone wrong all the time, especially in a kind of an intense pressure area like anime, you're going to miss a lot of the fun, you know, basically on it. And you miss the moment and the opportunity to to do something really great for both the fans and the creators, you know. So, like, I think the answer is I wish I could go back. The biggest failure is not having a time machine to go back in time and deliver myself via anime equivalent of a sports almanac, you know. Hopefully not with the same reaction as Back to the Future 2, though they're on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up, Thomas Koch on YouTube asks, are you working on iOSS, aka prepaid VAT, for EU customers on our online store?
That is a question for our online store team, I'm afraid, on that one. That is not an area I am particularly well versed in, actually, on it. One to look into for me on that one, actually. But I mean, I think like iOSS as a whole is something where like it does make sense to look into on it. So I'd be surprised if we weren't looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly something that has been asked here and there by our overseas customers. So yeah, certainly something that is on the docket to be investigated. So sticking with the chat, Agent 347 asks, Castletown, Dandelion, and Garden of Words are some of the very few anime limited titles that went straight to standard edition. Any hope to go back to these and give them something fancier, I guess?
I mean, yes, definitely on that frontier. I'd love to, especially Garden of Words. There's a huge place in my heart for that. So yeah, like stay tuned on that one. So happens as well that Mr. Shinkai is releasing a new film this year, so that'd be a nice time to go back and look at Garden of Words. Also, we happen to release Garden of Words, like at least in like at Scotland Loves Anime at the same time as our first year in business, as I recall. So I mean that's a good timing given it's our 10th anniversary next year. So you know the two overlap very well.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's one that just like entertains me, just the prospect of it, from Redboard here in the chat. Would you ever make a British dub like the one the BBC did for Urusei Yatsura? I'm not sure whether that's like a more generally making a British dub or making one specifically like that.
Would I like to work in anime again is the question I think I'm being asked here on it. And the answer to which is, I mean, if like was a situation which made sense, you know, like to bring back like, you know, the logical one would be to bring back the cast to do an episode or half an episode or something of the new series if we had the rights to that. But as a general rule, the one like if we were to say Yatsura is maybe a difficult question to do on it. I mean, in a fantasy world, maybe yes, like I would love to, but in terms of actual pragmatic business, I think that's a challenge, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No more Urusei Yatsura dubs, sadly. I think is probably the honest truth there. It's very much of its time.
Yeah.
So Ghibli fan on the YouTube chat says, all the anime has a great customer connection. No other big distributor has your kind of engagement. Was this relationship / engagement what you expected, or did it come as a surprise?
I think the secret is we're not actually, like in terms of internal, like kind of human count, we're not actually a big company all in all. So I think it's very much related to that for us. We all still like look for that, like important to have relationship engagement with people. So it's kind of, as the answer is, it kind of is it's what we wanted. We never expected either way on it. You kind of have to just see how it goes. But it was a real pleasure seeing. We really enjoy the kind of connection we have with all of you. It's like it kind of helps us keep on the straight and narrow. I mean, it's like, but both ways, we don't hear everything we want to hear all the time. But likewise, you don't always get the responses you want all the time as well. But like an open dialogue is kind of about that kind of situation and learning to manage with that, you know? So it's kind of I guess it's what we wanted out of this, like kind of like relationship and engagement, you know, with people. So hopefully it is what you guys wanted too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a very important part of what we do. And, you know, like when we say we want feedback on things, you know, we're not just saying it because it sounds cool. Like, we do genuinely love hearing what you guys think, what you like, what you don't like. And yeah, like the relationship that we've built up with so many people who we see regularly, you know, back when we were at Comic Cons and the like, and who we talk to online is, you know, it's really enjoyable. And it's great to, you know, talk with people who are so passionate about stuff. So yeah, long may it continue. So we're kind of running low on time here, so I guess we'll just go through a bit of a quick fire round and tidy up some of the final "Are you releasing X?" questions before we head off for our Friday evenings and I don't know, let you watch the football or whatever it is you're planning to do. So Sakaris on Twitter is up first. Got a gap in my Konosuba collection. Any update on the movie Blu-ray release?
I wish I did just now on it, but that's kind of in the laid back camp just now. The rights are not. Like, the rights kind of like tied up just now, but never say never on it. We have done the first two, and we really enjoyed working with both of them. So as soon as we have some news, we'll let you know.
Excellent. Here in the YouTube chat from Takacode, any plans on licensing El Hazard, The Wanderers, and My Atome?
Would love to do both. No news just now, but stay tuned on it. My Atome is much more immediately likely, though, than El Hazard, The Wanderers, but again, it's definitely not in the never say never camp, you know?
Excellent. So Clive Finney on Facebook asks, is there any chance of you doing a DVD or Blu-ray release of Black Butler, Book of Murder, and Book of Atlantic?
I wish I could say that the answer was yes, but I feel like that's one in the Hikara-san category that for some reason is quite complicated. I don't know why it's not come out of yet, because I believe it is somewhere, but it's not with us, I'm afraid.
Yeah, fair enough. Austin Becker here in the chat asks, any news about ReZero Season 2?
Not just now on it, but stay tuned. Like on that front, yeah, we're releasing the vinyl of ReZero Season 1. It would not surprise you if Season 2 came behind it. And I would love to have some more news for folks at that point.
Excellent. This is a very simple question that I think many people are thinking or have asked from Kanasuki03. UK Gunbuster release? ?
Yes.
There you go. We told you this would be quick fire. So next up, Redboard in the chat asks, any news on Pompe the Cinephile getting a home video release?
This is the bane of Andy's life just now. We are waiting on some assets just now back in. It's in process, though. It's a lovely design ready to go, barring one part of it, which is just in process. So it's not going to take too long once we have that approval done. So stay tuned, like hopefully very, very soon on it, because we'd love to get a lovely collector's edition out to folks soon.
Okie dokie. And then next up, we've kind of already answered this somewhat, but Applin Games in the chat asks, when will there be a Tokyo Ghoul S DVD?
Sometime in the near future, I would hope. Stay tuned.
Absolutely. So, final question, and then we will wrap things up and let everybody get back to their evenings. From Thomas Cock in the chat, will the 12 days of Christmas include free EU shipping for large orders? I can answer that one and say yes. And use that as a segue to remind people about our 12 days of Christmas sale, December the 1st to the 12th. New products every day, savings across our product range. Check out our showcase video right here in the YouTube channel to see all of the details about that. And we look forward to you guys having a good time and having a good anime full Christmas as a result of the sale. So make sure you check it out and find all the goodies within. So I think that's it for questions. Thank you ever so much for everybody who joined us and who asked questions and participated. It's been great to see you guys chatting away in the chat and asking all of these questions. But Andrew, I will cede the floor to you. Is there anything that you want to share, plug, discuss with people before we disappear into the night?
I think in terms of general sharing, I just thank you so much, guys, for sticking around. It remains an absolute pleasure to work with everyone at Anime Limited to bring you fantastic titles. I'm looking forward to, as we reach our 10th year, another 10 years of it. To be honest, on it, it's really exciting. If I had to shout out one thing just now on it, it would be I'm looking forward to releasing a lovely, lovely book for Nadia just now. So please stay tuned on it. If I had to personally shout something up,
Yeah.
Hopefully we can do Ask Andrew at least twice next year, Andy.
And yes, I mean, we enjoy doing these, so duly noted, and we will see when we can schedule one of these in again. But with that said and done, that is us done. That's a wrap for this stream. Again, thank you ever so much for joining us, and thank you, of course, to Andrew for taking the time out to answer all of these questions. And hopefully, we will get to do this again very soon.
Here's hoping.
So take care of everybody. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you all again very soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, folks.